Okay, hello everyone, I'm Paarth.
Hello, my name is Medha.
I'm Amrutha.
And I'm Bijan.
So we're going to be talking about unit 2.8 and 2.9 for AP Microeconomics, and we're going to go over some of the practice questions in the textbook. So I'm going to start with number 2 on this textbook question. So it says, consider the market for butter shown in the accompanying figure, and the government imposes an excise tax of 30 cents per pound of butter. So whenever the government imposes an excise tax of 30 cents, that means that every single point of the supply line, it's going to move up 30 cents. So 60 would move, sorry, my drawing's going to be really bad. Let me use red, sorry. Oh, water block, okay. So 60 would move to 60 cents would move to 90 cents. This would move to $1. This would move to 110, and then it keeps going. So I'm just gonna make like an approximation. This is your new supply line, right? And so then to figure out how much the consumer pays and how much the producer pays, you can draw a line through this area, right? And so this is what your consumers are willing to pay, and this is what the producers are going to sell it for. Is that correct? I think that's right.
It is absolutely correct.
Okay. And then for the last question, it says, how is the incidence of the tax allocated between consumers and producers? So when they're talking about allocation of resources, they're usually referring to, are your consumers best fitting the demand of the consumers? And in this situation, the answer would be no, because there's a deadweight loss, right? In this triangle right here. So that means that your your resources aren't being allocated wisely, and that you could have used those resources for another consumer, and producers could have benefited more from it at equilibrium price. So I will clear all of that, and then, oh, I did not mean to do that. And then go to the next question. Okay. So we're gonna do these multiple choice questions. We can do this as like a group setting, and then we can like see how everyone does on these. So for the first question, at market equilibrium in a competitive market, which of the following is necessarily true? So
So we know that at equilibrium, consumer surplus and producer surplus is supposed to be maximized because out of all the different combinations, that's the most amount of surplus you can get right in the middle, right when there's at equilibrium.
yeah,
What does it mean by total surplus is maximized? What does that mean?
total surplus is producer surplus plus consumer surplus.
Oh, I guess so then, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking it might just be total surplus though, because there could be
Oh wait, yeah, you're right. Because
might
it
just
could
be
like,
total surplus.
yeah, it could like go all the way down here. Sorry, I can't even draw.
Yeah, go ahead, Indra.
Yeah, but if you like go down here, so this entire thing could be consumer surplus. So yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
So I guess the answer would just be C.
Yeah, so is everyone good on that? Okay. For the next question, when a competitive market is in equilibrium, total surplus can be increased by reallocating consumption among consumers, reallocating sales among sellers, and changing the quantity traded. So both of these three things are readjusting your supply and demand curves to best fit your allocation of your consumers. So basically best being allocatively efficient. So if you graph each of these out, let's do number 1 first. So this is your supply and demand. And then it says reallocating consumption among consumers. So wouldn't that would mean like benefiting the consumers, right? So
Yeah.
would that be a movement up the demand line?
Yeah. But
Right.
if it's yeah, I'm not really sure about that actually.
So I'm pretty sure it's movement of the demand line. So then it would, before it used to be this much, right? And then now it's this much, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a good thing, I guess, for your reallocating consumption, it actually makes total surplus decrease, right? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, wait. I'm trying to navigate. Okay. Can you put the drawing back up again? Sorry, it's
Yeah.
glitching for me.
Okay. So supply and demand, right? So reallocating consumption among consumers basically means, would that basically mean increasing your quantity demanded, or would that be increasing your quantity demanded? Right? So maybe you're producing more. I'm not sure.
What is reallocating consumption?
So it means like adjusting your equilibrium price so that I think it benefits consumers. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So would it maybe be a shift to the right for demand?
Um, yeah, I think so. Because more demand. I mean, the quantity demanded increases, right? So that's the only way.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Wait 1 second. I'm not really sure what this question means. Okay, let's come back to it then.
Yeah.
Okay. For number 3, which of the following is true regarding equity and efficiency? So I read the textbook a little earlier, and equity is just basically readjusting the economy to best fit, like to make environment more equal. Remember the taxes we talked about in class? A progressive tax is shifting it so that the people who have higher income would pay more. A regressive is the opposite. People who have lower income pay more taxes. Proportional would be people who pay equal percentage of tax, and then there's an excise tax, which is completely different. So it would be
Equity is proportional or what?
equity. No, equity is just trying to make your economy more equal.
Oh, so those are the different ways to make it
Exactly,
equal,
yeah.
I guess. Okay.
So
Okay.
it wouldn't be A because it doesn't ensure anything, right? I mean, even if you have equity, it doesn't mean you ensure efficiency. Neither equity nor
Should it be
efficiency.
D? I don't
That's
know.
not true. There's
Like
not
there's a
generally.
general
That's not
is
true
it?
because
Oh.
economists believe that everything will readjust at equilibrium at some point. And then I'm pretty sure it's B, right? Because you deal with the different taxes. Okay, sorry. Now let me move down. So an excise tax is imposed on sellers in a market will result in which of the following? So does anyone want to answer this question?
Okay, and I think it's not, when they say upward shift, they mean like the supply moves to the right or moves to the left for that one.
It would, so excise tax would move it up like right.
Yeah.
Well, left
It moves
actually,
up.
above, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's the first one and the third one, because I think back in the PowerPoint it mentions how supply moves to the left, and then deadweight loss is created because the producer surplus and consumer surplus decrease, and also the total surplus also decreases.
Yeah, so if you look exactly what, basically what Amrutha said, if you look, it's an upward shift, right? Because it moves up. And then a downward shift of the demand curve. Well, in this situation, we haven't even looked at demand. I'm pretty sure that's in unit 6. And then, oh, I guess Medha left. And then deadweight loss, because if remember when you're doing this, it's like something like, sorry, it's that, and then there's also that, and then there's like deadweight loss, the triangle in between, right? So this would be the producers, consumer, then the tax revenue. So it would be D, 1 and 3. Okay, and then number 5, an excise tax will be paid mainly by producers when, so this one deals with elasticity. So I'm just gonna type like the general rule for this on the screen. So when your demand is more inelastic, that means that consumers carry more of the burden. So does anyone have like a good example of inelastic demand, like a good that we could call inelastic? Okay, let's say gasoline. So if so let's say that there's an excise tax placed on gasoline. Does that mean I'm gonna stop buying gasoline? No, I can't. I have to go in both of my cars. I have to get to school. I have to do things, right? I have to get somewhere. And so that means that regardless of the tax, I'm still going to have to pay for the tax, which means that I'm going to be I'm going to carry most of the burden for the tax. Let's look at, so then same situation, when your supply is more inelastic, that means that producers carry more of the burden. So does anyone have a good example for that one? Whenever supply would be inelastic, something that suppliers can't change as much. I was thinking maybe something like electricity, right? So if the government taxed them for electricity, they can't just suddenly stop providing electricity to the city, right? Because it's a necessity for us. So in this situation, it's mainly produced by producers when supply is more inelastic. So let's see, price elasticity of supply is high. Yeah, so it would be D, right? Or is it, no, wait. So it would be C. Okay, the wording is kind of annoying here. So when your elasticity is low, that means it's inelastic, right? Because it's in between 0 and 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me add that. So this means when elasticity is low, that means inelastic, relatively inelastic. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it for the multiple choice. I found this FRQ as well in the textbook, so I will put that on the screen and then we can do something with world price. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Yes, okay. Really? Okay. So I'm going to draw on here. So it says refer to the, okay, graph provided, assume the government has imposed an excise tax of $60 on producers in this market. So basically what that means is I'm going to shift the supply curve $60 at every single point on the supply curve. So I'm going to redraw that. So here, and then, why is it so thick? Okay, here, and then 120, right? So it would look something like that, right? So what quantity will be sold in the market? So when it's asking for quantity, it's telling me basically at what point is it lining up with the tax? And so at that, it would be here, right? At this point, that's right, yeah. And so that would be 1,000, right? And then what price will the consumers pay? So in this situation, you just have to check where the consumers are paying. So on the demand line. So they are going to be paying this, right? This amount, which is $90. And producers are going to be paying this amount or selling it at this amount, right? So $30. And then it says, how much will consumer surplus change as a result? So this one, you could graph it and figure out the two different areas of the triangles. So let's look at it before the excise tax. So let me erase this. And then let's look at it before the excise tax. So before, it's gonna be this amount, right? And what would that be? That's 1/2 BH. So it's gonna be, the height is 60 times 2,000, right? Over 2, which is 120,000 divided by 2 is 60,000, right? So 60K, sorry, I don't think. And then it's asking how much will your consumer surplus change. So I'm gonna redraw the excise tax here. And let me draw it in blue. No, actually, no, that's problematic. I'll draw it in dark red. Okay, so here, and then here, and here, right? 1 second, let me erase this part. Yeah. So here, oh, so sorry. So here, right? This part. So in this place, what would the consumer surplus be? It would be above the equilibrium price, which in this case is $90, but at the same time below the demand curve. So it's gonna be this area over here, right? So before we had 60,000, now what do we have? We have 30 times 1,000 divided by 2. So that's 15,000, right? So we went from 60,000 and then it went to 15,000. So that means your consumer surplus decreased by 40,000, which means that consumers would ideally be like less satisfied or they have less of a benefit in the situation. So we can do this, we can do a similar thing with producer surplus. So does anyone else want to do that? It's okay, I can do it too. Okay, I'll do it then. So if you look at producer surplus, let's look at the equilibrium price. So this is what it used to be, right? Equilibrium. And then when I add my tax, what does that do for my consumer surplus? So it used to be this, wait, is this right? This used to be producer surplus? That's right, right? Yeah, so then once you add the excise tax, the producer surplus would now be this small little triangle over here, right? Does that make sense? And the reason for that is because this is your new place for supply. So remember, it has to be below the equilibrium price and then above the supply line. So this is your new triangle. So you went from 60 times 2,000, so 120,000 to 15,000 again. So it'd be 45,000 again. Does that make sense? Okay.
Wait, Paarth,
Yes.
can you quickly go over why it's that triangle that's producer surplus? Because I think I know, but I'm not sure that I know.
Okay, so whenever you have your excise tax of $60, right? So this is my new line. So the place that where producers and consumers are going to pay in this market is right here, right? Does that part make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So by definition, producer surplus is the area above the supply line, but also below the equilibrium price.
Correct.
And so in this case, it would be this small triangle over here, right? Because this is the equilibrium price for suppliers. And then this
Right. Okay.
above the supply line. So it'd be this much when before it actually used to be this much.
Okay, so $90 is only the equilibrium for the consumers because the suppliers are still only getting 30.
Yeah, exactly. So it used to be this, and then for consumers, it became that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. And then, so now we have to find for D, for E, it says how much revenue will the government collect? So remember, that's usually like the rectangle in the middle of your surplus. So, right, so we said that this is our new consumer surplus and that this is our new producer surplus. So the area in between that line, where that line is drawn, this is what the government gets to keep, right? And so that would be just the area of a rectangle. So 60 times 1,000 is 600, I don't even know. Is it 60,000 or 600,000?
60,000.
Okay. Also just double check if these are right. I think they might be right. I'm not sure. And then for deadweight loss, remember that if we said that this is consumer surplus and that this is producer surplus. Now we have to figure out what is being lost in this situation. So the government keeps what's in green, the consumers benefit from what's in purple, the producers benefit from what's in brown. So the deadweight loss is this triangle in the middle. And so that's going to be base times height over 2. So the base is 60, the height is 1,000, right? Over 2. So that would be 30,000. Yeah. So that is the complete FRQ from the textbook. So if you ever want to review that, you can revisit the resources. And then I have one more FRQ. We already did it in class, but world price is like a very uncommon thing on the AP exam. So there's only one FRQ that I found for that. So I will screen share that, and then this meeting will be probably over. Let me see where I put it even in the first place. One second. Okay, I found it. So I know we did this in class, but I guess it's just good to talk it through and figure out like if we know like and can explain the concepts well. So does anyone want to try A?
Like out loud teach
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can try.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Like explain it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it says at the world price of $2 per pound, how much sugar is Loriland importing? So the world price line is that horizontal one at $2, because no matter what quantity people are buying, the price will always be $2. And so that world price line intersects the domestic supply line at 2 million pounds of sugar. And that means that Loriland can only actually like supply 2 million pounds of sugar themselves. But domestic demand is at 14 million pounds because that's where the world price line intersects the domestic demand line. So Loriland obviously has to make up the difference. So they're importing 12 million pounds of sugar.
Thank you. So for the next one, it says, suppose that Loriland imposes a per unit tariff on sugar imports and the new domestic price, including the tariff, is $4. So when that would mean that we're gonna have to draw a new line with the tariff. So right here, right? And I can name that PW plus T, right? Because the world price plus the tariff. And so the reason that the government does this is so that you can actually increase producer surplus, because if you look at it before, like if you look at producer surplus before, you can draw it out. So this is consumer surplus before. It's huge, right? And then look at producer surplus on the other hand. It's so small. It's literally that small triangle right over there. So once you add a tariff, or once the government actually adds a tariff, what happens is that the producer surplus increases to this area over here, right? And the producer surplus increases to this over here. However, you're still left with three other things actually, and it's this area over here. So this rectangle in the middle, let me use a different color, purple. Okay. This rectangle over here is what the government gets. I believe it's called, would it be called tariff revenue, I guess, because that's what the government gets from that situation, right? And then the two little triangles on the side are what could have been made if we were at the old world price. And so that would be the deadweight loss. So over here is your deadweight loss. So once you add a tariff on top of the world price, actually gets really, really, like there's so many components to think about. But if you look at it visually, look at how much producer surplus increased as to before. So just wanted to clarify that before we move on. So let me clear this. And this will be on YouTube later, so just in case you want to see. So let me draw the new tariff line. This is where it is. Identify the new level of domestic production. So would that be where the suppliers are, that's where the suppliers are supplying it. So would it be 6 right here? Yeah, okay. And then calculate the new domestic surplus for Loriland. So this is super easy. Just remember I shaded this area before. So it would be 10 times 5 divided by 2, so $25. And then this was 6 million. And then calculate the total tariff revenue collected by the government. So remember, I just went over this. This is your producer surplus. And then we're still left with 3 things in the middle. We have this area, which is your tariff revenue. So that would be 4 times 2 divided, yeah, just 4 times 2. So that's $8. And then a reminder that this is your deadweight loss. So if you want to do that for fun, just to test your knowledge, you can figure out what the total deadweight loss is. That's just the area of the 2 combined triangles. And then given the world price of $2, what per unit tariff maximizes the sum of Loriland's domestic consumer surplus and producer surplus? So we can actually graph this out. If you look at the world price and you just completely remove a tariff in total, you can see how large the consumer surplus is, and then how large the producer surplus is. So in reality, the real answer is $0 because if you look at it, whereas whenever we place a tariff, remember how much the consumer surplus decreased, and then we were left with deadweight loss in the middle along with tariff revenue. So ideally, the answer should be $0. So that's all for the FRQ for world price. Do you guys have any other topics you wanted to cover or anything else in general? Sorry, it's kind of fast, but I went over.
I was wondering if we could go over what's it called? Quotas.
Quotas? Oh, import quotas?
Did you go over that? Sorry, I kept glitching out.
Yeah. So import quotas, import quotas are different from tariffs, right?
Yeah, it's like.
That's like the diagonal shift, right?
Is it shift down or shift up?
So I watched this on AP Classroom, and they said that you're not actually responsible for doing that on the AP exam, but I guess it's still useful knowledge, so we can still do it.
Okay.
So if I have my supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
And then I add an import quota. Wait, so an import quota is when you add, that's when you're affecting quantity. So that's why it's a diagonal shift, right?
Yeah, you're limiting the quantity that can be sold.
So since we're dealing with the international, sorry, I forgot to label everything. Since we're dealing with the international level, we're still gonna have a world price, right? Does that make sense? So whenever you have an import quota, that means you're limiting the quantity. So when you're limiting the quantity, that would mean that you would shift the supply curve, right? Because it's based on domestic supply, right? So it would be something like that, I think. I'm sorry, I'm really unclear on this topic too.
Yeah, I thought it was shift down.
I'm pretty sure you shifted down because you're limiting the quantity, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically saying we're only going to produce this much, right? We're only going to produce this quantity amount. And then this horizontal difference actually is your quota.
Right. So this is just a question. So why are we shifting down? Because like there's more quantity demanded?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I know that's right, but I don't know why.
So okay, so you're limiting the quantity that is imported, right?
Mhm.
So let's say that, okay, I'm gonna come up with some random example. The US and India I mean, the US is importing okra from India, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say they're already doing 4 million pounds, okay?
Mhm.
Which means that domestically we're only making, let's say, 2 million. So then if
Oh,
I
okay.
limit India's amount imported to 3 million, that would mean that domestically I'm maybe, let's say I create 3 million now.
Mhm.
So I'm going to shift it to the right because my quantity is increasing at every single price. That I said that right.
Mhm.
So that means that this would be your like difference, or like your quota would be how much you really shifted your quantity. So does that okra example make sense?
Yes, I mean, so you're making more.
Yeah, so
You're
I'm
able to
making
sell
more
more at the same
domestic.
price.
Yeah, so whenever you're graphing these, just make sure you're thinking of the US only. This is things that are affecting the US domestically.
But aren't you able to sell more now?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so remember I said that if the US is importing 4 million pounds of okra each year, right? And then suddenly, let's say the US places an import quota. So that would mean that, okay, India, we're only going to let you import 3 million pounds now because we want our suppliers of okra to benefit too. We want to support our farmers. So what they're going to so what they're going to do is they're going to limit how much India they get from India, right? Import is how much like you're buying something. They're going to limit how much they're going to import, and they're actually going to have their farmers and their suppliers make more. So in the US, your supply shifts to the right because you're increasing supply for that particular moment, particular time period. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
so in US only, there's more quantity supplied.
Yeah. So
Um,
completely ignore
okay.
India, but just think about in the background what's happening.
Okay.
Okay, I hope that helped. But,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything else anyone wanted to go over? That's pretty much everything that's on the quiz tomorrow. So I hopefully this meeting helped. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So you guys are good to go. Let me stop recording. That's it.
Thanks so much.